What's up, y'all? We get it cracking. I just had to get my biggie on, bring Brooklyn into the space real quick. I know we got North Carolina, we got Atlanta. I just saw we got Colorado in the building. So, we got Harlem in the building. Mr. G, other, big piece of Kicks Academy, Kicking Knowledge is in the space. So, of course, I just want to say thank you for the Whitaker Group inviting me to kind of speak to you on this first man-to-man episode. But before we're going to start, I just want to turn it over to, the two powerful, beautiful, amazing sisters who kind of called me and was like, yo, coach, let's try to do something. So, but if I'm not mistaken, man-to-man is your creation. So can you kind of, I know it's just a quick Q&A in the beginning, but tell me how you guys created Man-to-Man and what made you decide like, man, this is a platform and this is really, really important that we do this.
Well, it was actually Shanice's brainchild. And when she brought it up, I was like, this is a great idea. And then she was like, do you know who would be great for this? Michael Peterson. And I was like, hell yeah. Like, that's a great idea. So Shanice, go right ahead. Explain the brainchild.
So in the process of us brainstorming to like come up with some events, we always want to be intentional. Mm-hmm. I was like, an event that we really don't have is something where we're utilizing different people who are leading in our community, doing something super pivotal, and opening the floor for them to be like, hey, this is how I got started. This is like the experiences I have. A lot of the times, like on social media, we see people who are already making it. They're already doing it. We don't get to see like the dirt and the grime because they want to keep it hidden or they don't want to assist other people up. And a lot of times, all you need is a push, or all you need is to hear a certain conversation or certain words to kind of get you through there. And I really want to see a lot of like men in our community, Black, brown men, moving, doing great things. And a lot of times they're held up on themselves. So I thought that, what doesn't Michael Peterson know how to do? Because he does everything right. He's great at everything. I was like, yo, we need to get him on here because he's got the power. He's gonna put on it. Okay. And he's gonna like he's gonna push everybody, because just simple conversations like with him is like, what are y'all doing? Okay, y'all blessed, y'all out here doing such and such and such. Why would you complain today? It's like, you woke up, you're here, you get to do this, and it'll change your whole mindset. Because I was like, dang, we were just complaining about this, and now I kind of feel bad about complaining about something when in actuality we do get the opportunity that people don't. So I had to bring Michael Peterson the Great, up here to share his story, because I was captivated by it. I'm still captivated by it. I'm so hyped to learn some new things about him tonight. But yeah, I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Yeah, so Shanice and Sam, I'm just gonna hit my reaction buttons because two awesome, really powerful women within the Whitaker Group, outside of the Whitaker Group, doing their thing, and I'm excited to be here and kind of share with all of you and anyone who is going to watch the recording, kind of, just about who I am and leave you with some real information and tangible information and actionable items to be able to kind of move forward and do some things powerfully, right? So I'm just gonna share my screen. Hopefully you can all see it. But today's theme, or what we're gonna play around with, is this idea of kind of changing the game, right? We always hear that, we in the hood, I'm gonna change the game, son. You know what I'm saying? Or, you on the basketball court or the football field, and it's like, I'm gonna change the game. I'm gonna be the change of the game, right? And I think, this particular picture that you see here is a group of young people at the Nike office during a very special, kind of event that I was able to work on. But the picture behind them, I think really kind of catalyzes and speaks to this idea of what it really means to change the game. And especially being that, we're sneaker centric or streetwear centric, we have to give homage and really understand that nothing we build was built by ourselves, right? And so I'm just gonna kind of start off a little bit and go into, my slideshow, and then we'll do a Q&A and just have some general conversation with anyone who joins or with anyone who's in the group. And so my name is Michael Peterson. I became Coach Mike, right? My origin story. I'll give you a little bit of my origin story, but I became Coach Mike about 4 years ago, right? So I'm an educator, a marketer, a father, husband, and just someone who is consistently on a journey throughout life to self-provocate in a way that's most positive for the earth, as well as my family and my people. When I say my people, of course, I'm talking about humans, but definitely humans who come from the African diaspora, right? Which is all humans, right? But those that are oppressed within the diaspora, which I think is extremely important to be kind of clear on that. And so when it comes to kind of my journey, it starts off in many different places, right? But I'll go all the way back because it speaks to where I am right now. And so as a young person, I grew up in Marcy Projects in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. And, that's from birth to around 11 or 12 years old. And within that time, I always tell people, like, if you grew up in the P's in the 80s, I think you really have a different perspective on what life is and then what life could be, because I had a project family. So my family, we're talking like 30, 40 people, when you go to those hoods and they like every sister, cousin, brother, uncle is a part of this family. Well, I was one of those big families, but my family was unique in the way that we were from the hood, but the hood is something that I think got catalyzed through movies, right? Because every kid in my neighborhood was a scholar, was educated, no matter what that looked like, right? Because, we talk about the 80s and we talk about the crack epidemic and we talk about, people who were on the block, but the people who were on the block, they were smart. They came from great homes. They had good communities. They had a village, and my neighborhood has always been a village, right? And so many times people understand or look at Marcy Projects from the perspective of like, well, that's Jay-Z. I think Jay-Z is a great representation of what my community does to shield its Black men and young Black men when they make mistakes. I think he's probably the perfect example of that, because the shields that he had, even though, there's definitely a certain level of trauma and experiences that he had growing up there, as well as I did, as well as most people did within that community, there was still a shield. There was still a connection. My grandmother, who is still alive to this day, she's 91 years old. She was kind of the person in the community that really raised the hood, right? Everybody went to her for food. She was the chef at the daycare center. So most people, are really interconnected to her in a much different way, right? And so she had 16 children. All of her children had children. And so we can kind of, speak to like why my family was so big, but also too, everything in my neighborhood, Milk D shot, his video at the cow pool right down the block. I learned how to ride my bike in a big park. And so that's really what began my journey throughout the rest of my life, was that community, was that village, was the things that I saw, was the MCs that I was connected to and I would see rapping on the block, was, my love for sneakers didn't come from, Nike ads. They came from the hustlers that were on the corners, or my older brother, with a lineup of sneakers. And if anyone knows about growing up in New York City in that time, you were shopping at Buster Brown and Fat Albert. It wasn't like you were getting fly, right? Like there was no money for that, In the intersection of my neighborhood and my community is also very interesting because it's located directly in the middle of the largest Hasidic Jewish population in New York City. And so what you got to see when you walk down the block, right, is also to this intersectionality of culture. So when I first got my first pair of shoes, the first actual pairs of shoes for walking, they were built by a Jewish cobbler. You went to the Jewish butcher. You walked up the block. And this is what a lot of people don't know about Marcy Projects specifically, right? Like, people think that you only exist in the bubble of that 4-block radius, but that's not true. You exist very much outside of it. Then if you take maybe 8, 9, 10 block walk up towards Woodhall Hospital, you're hitting Bushwick. So you're hitting all your huge Latino, Asian community, you know, and you're intersecting with that culture on a consistent basis. So you're seeing Tai Chi the same way you're also, you know, being impacted by merengue and salsa. And so all of this is the beginning of really where my story burgeoned and how I begin to kind of create this trajectory in life. So I'm currently an educator. I teach at the elementary school that I went to. I decided to do that at around, I'm 40 years old. I decided to do that at 35 years old after a very long career in marketing and entrepreneurship and owning businesses and music and all these other things that you'll hear about that I did. But I want to start there because at my elementary school in the 4th grade, in the neighborhood that was riddled with crack, in the middle of the crack epidemic, in this intersectionality of all of these things that are happening with great parents, with great grandparents, with great aunts, uncles, wild ass cousins, like all of that, that's where it began. So in the 4th grade, I realized that I was destined for something great because everyone around me was great. We was the best fighters in the street. We was the best ball players. We were the best conversationalists. We were the best beatboxers. We were the best b-boys. We were the best jumpers. We could do backflips off of mattresses. This is all what was happening in my neighborhood community as we watched a Jay-Z sit on the bench in front of the Flushing side of the projects, right? Because there's 2 sides. So anybody that don't know, it's in front of the Flushing side of the P's and just be a regular kid. And so what you have to know, and what I'm really, this whole point of this idea of changing the game is that wherever you start from, understand that everything is still a part of your journey to where you're going and where you're trying to get to. And so that's just a little bit about me from a younger perspective. Years later, right, I went to school, went to high school, you know, played basketball, played football, didn't start playing in sports really until I was like 16 years old, seriously. And when I say, you know, because people play and then they play. When you're from Brooklyn, you play ball. That's just what it is. But then there's people that play ball. So grow up in an era where I'm seeing Sham God and I'm seeing Stephon Marbury and I'm seeing them in the parks. I'm seeing them at the tournaments, you know, then going a little further on and you start seeing, you know, your LeBron Jameses at ABCD camp, right? And you're seeing all these amazing ball players. So that's something that you do. It's very natural. But a part of that also means that you're starting to get exposed to the more creative side of life, right? Because then you're meeting your DJ Clue, you're meeting, right? You're in these spaces where they're coming to the parks and you're wondering like, how they get that chain? How they get that car? They don't sell drugs. So what do? Oh man, they do music. So it started an affinity, you know, around 16, 17 years old, where I knew like, man, you know what? Maybe music has some connection in my life. My older brother rapped, you know, my cousins rapped. And when I say they rapped, I don't mean like they just rapped. They were signed to deals with like Wyclef and Duck Down and like just, you know, real major, you know, labels and things that was happening at the time in the 90s where you were getting to be a part of the experience of hip hop culture. My first job came around 16 years old. And this was also my first time ever going to Harlem from Brooklyn. And so on that trip, on my second day of work, because this was a hookup from my homegirl, and I worked at the Salvation Army on 138th and Lenox. Anybody that knows Harlem, that place is still there. But if you know anything about 138th and Lenox, and you know anything about the area, then you'll also understand, like, I was intersecting with not just what was happening with Hove and Rockefeller, but that's where you're seeing the Dame Dashes, the Big L's, the Diddies. You're actually experiencing what they were building while they were building it. and this is 1996, 1997. And so once again, right, I'm going to say there's something in the water in my neighborhood that creates greatness, right? And that's why I'm wearing my sweatshirt from my school, right? My Bulldogs, because there's something about PS 297, IS 33, right? Sumner Projects, PS 59, 318. We all have these places in our communities, right? And most times we're running from them. And that's why this whole concept of changing the game is theme, right? Because we run from them, not understanding that those are the things that actually create who we are and how we're going to get to where we want to be when we're in the grave, right? And so as I went to Harlem at 16, 17 years old, all of a sudden I'm seeing Big L rap on the block. I'm seeing Mace, Cameron. These like experiencing things that if you know anything about New York City, there's kids that never leave Brooklyn and never leave Harlem. So they never get to intersect and experience those things, right? And so here I am at 16 against my parents' will, heading, because Harlem was real. Harlem was abandoned buildings. Harlem was empty lots. Harlem was the hustle game on another level. We talking Grant's Tomb. We talking, 14-year-olds driving around in drop top Saabs, BMWs, like getting that money for real. And that's what Harlem was. And that's what it exposed me to. But it exposed me to also kind of understand that, man, maybe one day I could create something that looks like this, feels like this, speaks to the art, but takes out the negativity, right? It takes out the pain. It takes out the trauma, right? Because everything that's built, everything that we want to be, everything that we see currently, it comes from not just the trauma of crack, but the trauma of the civil rights movement, the trauma of oppression, the trauma of, transatlantic slave trade, the trauma, right? So it's trauma, trauma, trauma. And so in understanding that, the pain that's there, there's also a beauty that's there, because even in all of our breeding, right? Because we were bred here, and all of our breeding, we come out to be these amazing things. And seeing Big L rap, I don't think anyone can understand like how amazing it was to see someone that skilled lyrically, right? Who's a part of this thing that was created by 12 and 13-year-olds in the late 70s, early 80s, right? Because remember, right? Change the game. I'm an educator. I currently teach at the school that I went to because of the experience of my neighborhood, right? Hip hop was created by 12 and 13-year-olds. By the time they were 15 and 16, they were hanging out with Andy Warhol. They were hanging out, they were creating what this world looks like. So to me, this was my famous factory. This was me experience these things at 16 and 17. So anyway, I didn't do so well in high school. If you hadn't noticed, I was very preoccupied, right? I left high school with like a 72 average. I found out I was graduating the day of graduation. So luckily I'm alive. My parents didn't kill me because they promised me I'd be dead if I didn't graduate on time. There was no question of that. They're like, you're gonna die, 100%. Just prepare for it. You just be dead. Just be write your will, because we're gonna kill you. And so, I turned that around, graduated high school on time. And then, you get to college. It's 1998 when I graduated. Didn't really understand what college was about. I just knew it cost money. And so I think for the first time in my life, in 1998, 1999, I started thinking about how the hell am I going to pay my school bills? Right? Because my parents weren't those, we don't come from that. We don't come from a space where, people could cut that check and you just go into school and you could go waste some time. It's like, get a job, figure it out, or you're going to be in these streets. And so a good friend of mine in high school was a drug dealer, really cool dude, but he just hustled. His older brother hustled. And so I remember he was going to a particular college. And so I was like, oh man, if you going to college, I could damn sure do that shit. You know, like I could do it. If you could do it, I could do it. And so we started going to school, and I'm still working in Harlem, still having that experience. And I remember as I began to go to college, I recognized like, oh my God, another facility that I could use to recognize and kind of build out my dream. And that's when I really started understanding like, man, I want to do music. I want to be something in this music space. And so years later, right, at about 19, I created this thing that kind of, you know, gave me the opportunity to interact with some prominent, you know, MCs, artists, producers. And it's funny because I just posted it on my LinkedIn page as like a thing, right? Because I was like, man, I forgot I even created something like this at the age of 19 years old. And so I'll share that with you guys. And then we're going to kind of jump into like some more meat and potatoes. But if you have any questions at this point, please feel free, throw them in the chat. We just kind of going down memory lane. So this was a project I created. It was called the Lyricist Lab. And if anyone knows anything about New York City, there was this club called Club Cheetah. And I was a promoter at Club Cheetah, way underage, of course, right? 18, 19 years old. And I realized that live music wasn't something that was really a part of the hip hop live show, right? And I was like, man, we like, you know, once again, being in music, you go to see Sade, you go to see D'Angelo, you go to see, right? You're going to these shows, like this is what you're doing. And you're experiencing these things. And I'm gonna tell you how I experienced them from a very specific way after I show it to you. So this is way before we knew about creating properties like Verses and how we sell them to Triller, like all these things were happening. I created a property and I was able to use this property to kind of like take me to different spaces and places. Now, as a sidebar, I wrote for Vibe, right? So I wrote for Vibe magazine. And the way I got that job is I literally called them every day for 6 months at the same exact time, every single day, just so I could get in the building. And once I got that opportunity, I wasn't gonna let it go. And so Vibe Online was just launching at the time, around 1999, 2000. Hip hop magazines were the biggest thing in the world. You're talking, you know, your Source magazines, your Vibe, Double XL was just now really coming on the scene. And so being able to be a writer then allowed me to meet, you know, all of the amazing people that many of you have experienced over the past few years, right? And so at the same time, since I was doing so well at Cheetah, there was another club that I was able to promote called SOBs in New York City, which is an iconic club. At that iconic club, I was able to do a classic concert or show. And that was with, you know, a young man you guys might know by the name of Kanye West. And so I never forget that show because I used to go to the Rockefeller office all the time because my friend was the head of radio promotions. And Def Jam was right across the hall from Rockefeller, right? And so the crazy part about it is that on one side, right, like you have this really crazy like corporate culture. Def Jam was, you know, I know people, they think of Def Jam and it's like, oh, it's cool. No, it was cubicles and work. And then on the other side, you smell weed and it was crazy. And that was the Rockefeller office. And so walking into the Rockefeller office one day and hearing about this guy who was this really amazing producer who then at the time, I guess, was deciding that he was going to be a rapper and he was going to go solo and all these things that were working out. And SOBs was the club in New York City that you wanted to book if you were trying to do live music. And so, you know, push comes to shove, it lands on my table. I had a team at the time, and me and my team, we had to push the show that nobody wanted to go to, funny enough, right? Nobody wanted to see Kanye West. But I believed in, once I heard the music, and then if you look at the catalog, there was no way in the world, right? And understand the progression, right? My neighborhood plays a very key component to my decision and my taste in music. And you can hear that in Jay-Z's first album. You know, if you listen to Ho's first album, then you can understand what Marcy Projects was about, you know. And it wasn't this thing of like, yes, it was crime ridden and things happened, but it was beautiful, it was glorious, and we didn't know that it was ugly to others because it was beautiful to us. And when I went to Harlem and I started being in Harlem and I started, you know, being around, you know, the Big L's as well as all of the creators of hip hop, right? When I first met Easy AD from the Cold Crush Brothers, he was actually my supervisor at the Harlem YMCA. Then he introduced me to Dougie Fresh. Then I met Grandmaster Caz. Then I met, you know, Grand Wizard Theodore. Then I met Kool Herc. Then I met, these are people who knew me since I was 17, 18 years old. And I'm experiencing them in all this way. So now fast forward, I hear Kanye, and I feel like Kanye is the beginning of this renaissance of music that existed within the space of Talib Kweli, Common, right? But also was a progression because it was Rockefeller, and you could get a little bit of that grit. So here we go. We do this crazy show. Man, in less than a few months' time, Kanye is #1 on the Billboard, and I get the opportunity to do his first show in New York City at a college called Pace University. And so we do the show. It got bigger than I could have ever imagined. I brought in Make-A-Wish Foundation. So please pay attention to like the pieces, right? Because change the game, it's important. Everything I do is connected to community, everything. So we do this huge show with Kanye West, #1 on the Billboard, just signed to Cara Lewis. And I say, let's raise some money for Make-A-Wish Foundation. Let's make this happen. MTV loves it. Pace University loves it. He gets a big check. At that show, you have John Legend, Marie Ben-Ari, A-Track. The list goes on and on and on and on, right? Don C, right? Everyone that you see now, right? They existed in that space. And so the Make-A-Wish Foundation, we raised an astronomical amount of money. We did some amazing things. And it was at that point where I realized, like, how in the world can I marry my love for music and art and creativity with a powerful impact in my community? It became extremely important to me, and I began to obsess over it. And my girlfriend at the time was a huge proponent in making sure that I was successful in realizing that dream and realizing that and making it happen, because I think she was able to see, like, wow, I've never met anyone like this, and I really can see the vision. And if there's anyone who can accomplish it, Mike can do it, right? And so as the years begin to go, you know, I'm still in music, I'm doing concerts around the world, I'm traveling around the world, and I'm meeting all these super interesting people, right? Who are looking to carve and create something new. So I'm meeting your Theophilus London, right? I'm meeting, you know, your Mellow X. I'm meeting your Kendrick Lamar. I'm meeting your J. Cole. I'm meeting all these people. And I said, man, how can I create kind of like my own Rockefeller, but a little bit different? And so what happened from there was, like, you know, 19, 20 years old, 2021, you know, around that time, I created something called Yume. And Yume means dream in Japanese. And the way Yume came about is because, you know, we know that the marriage between music, art, fashion, clothing, like all of these things intersect very heavily. And then, of course, you talk about sneakers. And so for me, I really wanted to kind of like create something that I knew would allow me to create my very own famous factory. And so I'll show you guys this real quick. This is what UMA was.
What's up, y'all? This is Mike, owner one piece of the UMA family. Welcome to UMA. We're located at 925 Bergen Street, Loft 406. We are the only Loftique in Brooklyn. You know, definitely doing something a little different. We're located in Crown Heights. I know you might read the magazines and it says Prospect Heights, but it's really Crown Heights. You know what I'm saying? So, shouts to the Crown Heights fam. We do a bunch of dope stuff here. UMA TV is really gonna show you, what we do, how we get it going. Music, art, fashion, and community. That's what we're about. Big shouts to Craig, one part of the UMA studio. We're gonna get it going, so look out, March 29th, it's coming. What's up, y'all? Welcome to UMA. We don't do that all the time here. Boy, I'm kind of tired. I had this crazy dream last night, man. Oh, man. I had this crazy dream that we had like this wild, crazy party on Friday, and like everybody was here. Trico came and they took over the entire UMA, and Mario Van Peebles showed up, and people were mad fresh to death. We had like Kesh in here DJing. Kesh lives in London. It's a crazy dream, man. I don't know, like.
That did happen.
Wow, yeah, I'm lead for the beat. Wow, if you don't know about me, wow, better ask someone quickly, cause wow, yeah, I'm wow, wow, yeah, I'm lead for the beat. Wow, if you don't know about me, wow, better ask someone quickly, cause wow, yeah, I'm wow, yeah, I'm wow.
You're barking up the wrong tree. The spotlight's on me. Start with a fume, I howl with the moon. How you gonna bust if there's no room?
3, 6, 9, the goose drank wine. The monkey chewed tobacco on the streetcar line. The line broke, the monkey got choked. They all went to heaven in a little rowboat.
Everything they do here about the black movement. Y'all can travel all the way from Delaware out here.
Right hand, clap, pat, clap your hand, cross it with your left arm, pat your partner's left palm. Clap, pat, clap your hand, pat your partner's right palm with your right palm again. Clap, slap, clap your hand, slap your thigh, and sing a little song. Go.
Chicago, man. Yeah. Man, you know I had ya. They call me Lupe, I be your new day. They wanna smell like me, they want my bouquet. But they can't, they accent it like the UK. Turn that Uday, Lupe, the Pepe, Le Pew spray. Flagrantly fragrant and they.
So I'll stop that from there. So I ran that space for the better part of about 7 or 8 years. And even in that video, you can see just some people who went on to do some really great things. You know, you can always look up Kesh. Kesh, you know, at the time was MIA's DJ, so I did a lot of work for MIA. Mellow X, of course, went on to produce for Beyonce. Rasan, who was in there, AKA DJ Fly Guy, is that guy, Live on Sundays, you know, and the list goes on and on and on. I mean, of course, we know who Mario Van Peebles is, but that space catalyzed my opportunity to build community in a totally different way. And not only build community, but also activate that community to work within the actual physical youth community in Brooklyn. And so when you see the beginning of that video, you know, I remember we got featured in the New York Times, and they were like Prospect Heights, right? Because Prospect Heights was right on the cusp, the precipice of being gentrified. But I was right in the middle of the hood. I was right in Crown Heights, in this building that was converted in between 2 abandoned warehouses, right under a train, like a train, you know, overlay, right? So I was looking to build something and bring the world there. You know, I remember, like, kind of taking trips with my man Stally, right? So taking trips with Stally to London, you know, taking trips with, you know, Out of Sight, you might have seen, like just all these different people and just existing around the world and meeting more people, right? You also heard, you know, that I had grime tracks in there. This video was shot in like 2006, 2005. So that's right at the beginning of grime in London and what was happening, you know, in that space. And the way I got connected there is that when me and Stally and we went to London, I was doing a project with the mayor of London at the time to work on this Shoot Basketballs, Not Guns campaign that was very big because gun crime and knife crime was believed to have been perpetuated by hip hop. And this is something that the London, like the UK community, the political community was really big on. And we wanted to show that it's possible to actually build something and to do, you know, we're positive people. And this is what hip hop is really about. There's 10 million videos I could show you about the different projects that, you know, I've done over the years, but I think that gives you kind of a little bit of a background. I want to go into kind of like the meat and potatoes of what I'd like to talk with you guys and have a discussion about, but I'll just read this. You know, be the change you want to see. You can't complain about the things you do not like about the world. You must become the change you want to see. If you are not a part of that change, then you are a part of the problem. The battle within yourself to become that change is going to be one of the most important journeys of your life. It is not only about figuring out about how you want the world to change, but how you will change yourself and in turn change the world. You are the beginning of the change that is to come. I wrote this in 2004. And it's a big part and a big proponent of how I've lived my life and how I've built each and every pillar. So I've shared a couple of pillars with you, right? So I've shared, you know, community, giving you a background about who I am, where I'm from. That pillar of community is extremely important to me globally, right? I've done work in South Africa. I've done work in Japan. I've done work in India. I'm doing work in India. I've done work in Germany and Berlin, where I am right now. Like, it doesn't matter. If we're melanated and we're scattered across the world, we have to create that change. And we have to be willing to go to these different parts and interact with our people and build things that can kind of like really shift the paradigm of what we're dealing with in current day form. So community. Art is another major pillar for me. Right? It's another major foundation that I've built year over year over year. I love music. I love painting. I love illustration. I love comic books. I love anime. Like, these are all things that I have loved. And it's a very, very much a part of my being and my existence. One of the things I'm going to share with you is, you know, obviously the bigger projects that we're working on now that kind of intersect that, right? Another pillar is my family. Right. So I mentioned I'm a father, 2 wonderful kids. You know, I have a daughter and I have a son. I'm a married man. So my wife is the most amazing being on the planet, in the universe. And, you know, my brothers and my mother and my father and my grandmother and the, you know, family is very, very important to me. And it doesn't mean that, you know, you have to talk every day, but I think that, you know, come from, and that they help to create who you are in this current moment, no matter how bad or indifferent, right? And so my fourth pillar speaks more to finances, right? It speaks more to, you know, having a, you know, wealth before riches. And I'll say that again, it's wealth before riches. So even before you go after the funds that you need to kind of create these projects and build your life, you have to build internal wealth, health, right? All 8 dimensions of wellness. And then you compound the money as an investment into that, right? And that means that, you know, instead of that Bentley, you know, you might want to invest in a physical therapist, right? You know, instead of that truck, you actually might want to get a therapist. So all of these things have been a big proponent of things that I was taught by hip hop and by prominent individuals in hip hop. And so that's just extremely important when it comes to those things, because these pillars, these foundations that you create is exactly how you're going to move forward and really change the game. All right. So listen, I've been talking a lot. I'm gonna pause there and I'm gonna open it up kind of like to Q&A, because as Shanice mentioned, you know, I kind of am, you know, mastering a lot of different things, but because I was a jack of all trades when I was very young. And so, you know, I'm 40 years old now, and I've put 20 years into this game. Very, you know, I would say even 22, 23, but I'm clear on where I want to be and where I want to end up. And before I show you that, I just want to kind of be a resource to you, because this is kind of man to man. It's not like mic to mic, right? So yeah, let's open it up, hit the chat, unmute yourselves. Give me some things to kind of talk about.
I want to ask, if you, being that you've done so much, looking back at it, because sometimes we do like reflect and ponder, is there anything that you would change or you would go back and redo that you think would improve where you are now? School.
I think, you know, I'm currently working, and I'll show you guys this project, but I'm building a makerspace in the high school that I went to, as well as the elementary school that I went to. I would build one in the middle school that I went to, but it's closed, right? So I think what I never realized is that how important school plays, not as the oppressive regime that is school, but the facilities, the people, right? Specific people, because everybody's not there for you to win. But I would have taken school to be a lot more of a resource to then catalyze and realize my dreams, especially I'm growing up in the golden era. So I'm growing up in the 80s and 90s, where people are creating literally something out of nothing, you know? And we're talking about the rise of the South, right? Like I met Outkast when I was a junior in high school, cut school, went to the HMV, and I'm meeting like the Goody Mob. You know, I know, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm, you know, 8-Ball MJG, like coming, New York City at the time was that epicenter of everything. And so if I could have used school and understood that I needed to learn, like, you know, simple things like the 7 key components of a corporation, what's finance, how do you run a marketing department, what's business, like, and I had those resources in my school. I just cut school all the time. I never went to school when I was in high school. So like that was a problem. I would change that, because if I could, I know I would be so much more prepared for the stumbles and challenges that I came up against as time went. If that answers your question. Cool. But I want to hear from Eaton. You know, it's a small group. I know we got my man Abe in here. Before I share this next project that I really want to talk to you guys about, because I think it's a good closer, because it'll show you where I am right now and what I'm doing. So feel free to unmute, hit the chat.
Is there something that you do specifically on days where you feel like unmotivated?
Sure. So I created this thing when I became Coach Mike. It's called the Mike Method. And it's something that I realized I had been in the lab creating way before I became a teacher. So before I became an educator, before I went back to school and got my degrees, I was a marketing director for a technology company, a pretty big technology company. And I ran all of North America, global branding. And I was the only Black person in the space. And so I realized that I had to create, you know, you go from entrepreneur, because that very same company was my client. And so I went from them as a client, you know, those deals, how they work, you know, and made a little deal, sold the company, went in-house, and was able to make some things happen. But I needed to have a certain level of discipline that I didn't have running my own thing, right? And having my own team. And so it's motivation, inspiration, knowledge, and education, sharing of knowledge and education, which is called the Mike Method. It's actually how I teach to this day. And so motivation, right? We usually start where we pumping ourselves up. For me, it's Ace Hood. I don't know what it is about Ace Hood, but he can make me jump through a window, do triple back flips, punch through walls. It's just something about his lyrical content, like how he puts things together, you know? But that's not enough, right? Because you then have to understand that there's extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, right? So you have the stimuli that comes from outside that motivates you, and then you have the intrinsic thing that gets you there. But inspiration is really the key, right? It's the thing that is consistently twirling around in your existence that gives you those aha moments that then makes you really want to catalyze that, you know, that intrinsic motivation, right? And then the sharing of knowledge. You can't not connect with people. So those days when you're feeling down, right? And you're right, all right, I'm gonna pump it up. I got my extrinsic motivation. It be that song, right? I'm inspired. I have this. You still need someone to bounce that off of. And that's where building your tribe and sharing your knowledge with one another is extremely important. It doesn't matter if it's one person or if it's 100 people, right? But 9 times out of 10, it may not exist on social media. Right? It's someone you physically, unless you know how to really build those relationships, right? Unless you really know how to catalyze social, where you are connecting with people for real, when they're sharing their lives with you and you're sharing your lives with them. That's the sharing of the knowledge, right? And then education. The thing you can never go wrong with learning. You can never go wrong with learning. The more consistent you learn your craft, the more confident you become. And I mean, your craft could be anything. It could be cleaning the bathroom, right? It could be mopping the floor. The better you get, the stronger you are, the more focused you are. So I apply that to my life pretty much every single day, especially being a father and a husband and you know, being in that space where I have many people to accord to, you know, and I have to give them all their equal due. So, yeah, that's how I do that.
Thank you. And I see we have a question in the chat. Devin asked, were you ever nervous about making the decision to go into education? And when did you know you made the right choice going into that field?
Oh, I mean, so I was nervous. And so the company that I was with at the time, there's these 4 French brothers called the Guillemot brothers. They started this company called Ubisoft, and about 30 other companies, right? And so at the time, I was managing a few different brands for them, doing some real dope legacy stuff, working on a movie, just a whole bunch of things that we were able to do and like really create. And I remember a homie of mine, he's in banking, right? So he's at Chase. And I had threw this crazy party. I don't know if you know about New York, but there was this party called House Party. And so ended up doing a big sponsorship deal with them. And I remember this specific night was Lil Uzi Vert. Never forget this, right? So I tell my homie, like, come through because you got to hear this kid Uzi. I think he's going to be big. This is the conversation. But I really wanted to talk to him about becoming a teacher. I was like, yo, I know, right? It's crazy. This is a crazy life. That's what I said. I live a very interesting life, man. And I'm not even thinking about that at that point. I just wanted to tell my friend that I was going to become a teacher and see what he would say. And me and him came up together. You know, we were in Inroads together. If anyone knows about Inroads, I'll just put it in here. It's a minority internship program that kind of gives you your road to becoming this corporate executive, right? So that very same person is the GM of Chase right now, right? And I was like, yo, I'm gonna become a teacher. Now, this is also a really good friend of mine who had traveled the world with me. We had done big shows. And so he had seen, you know, kind of what I had created. And the first thing he said to me was, of course you are, because you've always been a teacher. You've always been an educator. This is who you are. Go do it. And I was nervous because you do get connected. You know, we talked about that final pillar, you know, wealth before riches. But once you start getting the riches, it's very hard to let that go, you know? And so remember, I became a teacher strictly to teach at the school that I teach at right now. It was no other school. There was nothing else. But at the time, I didn't have a degree. I dropped out of college in 2001. So I had to go back to school, right? It wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to wake up and I'm going to go substitute tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? It was like, yo, no degree, right? So I went back to school. I got 2 degrees in 2.5 years, a bachelor's and a master's. And we're not talking like, oh, we're talking like 24 credits, 28 credits, 30 credits a semester. We're talking while I'm still raising my boy. We're talking while I still got to go on business trips around the world. We talk, right? And I didn't drop the ball, but the nervousness came from, I didn't recognize who I was. And I needed, and we talk about the shared knowledge part of it, I needed my tribe to share with me their experiences and help me understand who I was. As I was in the club with Uzi Vert on the top floor, Vashti on the second floor, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what I'm doing, and I'm doubting myself. I hope that answers your question.
Wow. We also have another question in the chat. Keaton says, do you have a hard time motivating the younger generation? You have a hard time motivating the younger generation. Times have changed and they look up to people we would have not generally looked up to. So
I always thought that I would have a problem as I got older, right? Because youth have been a part of my entire story. And I'll share something with you, like I said, right before we go, so this way you kind of see like how it all comes full circle. So I thought like, man, all right, I'm 40 now. And I thought, you know, 5 years ago, like, these kids ain't really gonna connect to me. Like, I'm doing this full time. Like, they really not gonna link with me like that. But I also realized, once again, I had to look in the mirror and recognize who I was. I was already in tune with, like, I knew who Lil Pump was before anybody knew who Lil Pump was. I knew who Lil Uzi Vert was. I've always been connected to the streets, like always connected to my culture at all levels. And I'm not someone that believes that because I'm older, right? A really clear philosophy to me is that we are all children. My grandmother is 91 years old. How could I ever think I'm an adult? She's 51 years older than me. You understand? She grew up in the 19 teens. You know, she was born in the 19 teens. She saw the depression, right? Like this, you know, so the way I connect with the youth today is really like, I keep it 100 about who I am. And I want them to keep it 100 about who they are, even if they're figuring it out. So the struggle that most people have, I don't have, which is also what I think makes me a kind of a good educator. You know, I think where things get lost in translation is when you're dealing with specifically teenagers who have forgotten where they're from. And so what we don't understand is that teenagers are going through this identity crisis because of because of the phone. So they realize like, oh, okay, I'm from the Bronx. right? Like I'm from the Bronx, but I think I'm from Fifth Avenue. You know what I'm saying? Like, nah, B, you from the Bronx. Like you got to figure that out. And you can't lose your identity to the oppressive regime, because that is the point. The whole point is to have you forget about the melanin and the power in your skin. And that's where you begin to have a lot of conflicts. And what people don't really know, because they're not in the school systems like that, a lot of kids go through that. TikTok, Instagram, right? Like that has a really big effect on, you know, imagine a young girl who's 15 years old who wants to get collagen injected lips, a young Black girl, young girl who wants to get because of Kylie Jenner. So these are things that I think get lost in translation when it comes to connecting to the younger generation. But around their music, around who they are, there's nothing that they've done that I haven't done, right? There's no, you know, my mother still tells stories about me cutting school and the things that I did to this day. And I'm 40 years old. She's to this day, I lie to you not. My mother hopped on Zoom right now. She'd be like, listen, let me tell y'all, I was about to kill him. I had to keep his father from killing him. He was, you know, so I can understand them, you know? And also too, like on the other side, as far as men go, you know, young men, I was a fighter as a kid, you know, like these scars on my face are not from like playing squash or, you know, polo, you know, like I like to rock with the hands. And so in that experience, I also got a taste of, you know, what does that mean for gang culture? And what does that mean for, right? And I was able to make the decisions that allowed me to not be a part of those things, but also I was 1 degree separation. I was very much in it. I also have older brothers and older cousins. And if I told you their stories, you'd be like, oh, okay, I understand. And that's why I started my story in Marcy Projects, because people see Jay-Z, but they forget about everyone else that has a story that's very parallel to his, right? He wasn't the only one that didn't get caught and lived to tell about it. So I hope that answers your question. But beyond that, these questions, once again, they're about me. How can I help you? Like, what can I do to help you progress in the things that you want to do, right? There's a wealth of knowledge that's in front of you. Tell me what you want to do and tell me how I can help and how I can get you, you know, to where you would like to be in any way, shape or form. That could be information, that could be resources, that could be introductions. But that's what we're here for. And it ain't that many of us. So feel free to hit the chat. Just let me know. You know what I'm saying? Like it's intimate, but I think it's even better because I can really like break down a project you're working on or something you want to do, or, you know, or if you're becoming a parent, or, you know, all these things are things I could really speak to.
I guess I'll go first. I have an idea about doing a podcast series where, I don't know if you've heard of, have you ever listened to Issa Rae's Fruit?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's funny that she came out with that, because that's like, it's not the exact same idea that I had, but it was the same way that I wanted to do it. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to do a sort of kind of radio drama, I guess. You said that you've done films before and things like that. Like, what's some advice that you feel like was something important that you feel like people should know before they venture into filming or doing series and things like that, or creating, as far as like, you know, funding or keeping cast in mind, or like just anything? Like what do you feel?
Well, I think first and foremost, don't let the money stop you, because I think that's where we really get caught up when we're filming. So my company primarily has been a content company since the early 2000s. And so we're talking about like before you can shoot on a DSLR, right? So you had to really have a full-blown set. You had to have like a real cameras. You had to, you had to pay your SAG employee, like you had all of these things that existed. Now, all you need is a camera, an understanding of light, and you could do whatever you want to do. If you want to do a podcast, you need a mic and a phone, or you just need a phone, right? Like the beginnings of a thing are beautiful. And I think that's really where we get lost, because we want this polished thing and we think that's the beauty, but the beauty is really in the beginnings of the thing. So I would say, script your first 2 shows and then shoot them, record them, get them done. Then, I'd also just have to be really real about tangibles. Collect the data, take the notes, understand how to utilize that data within what you want to do in the progression of this project, right? Because a lot of time we take artistic projects and we go off of feeling, but budgets, right? Like what you spent, how long it took, right? All of these data sets become extremely important because it allows you to get better each and every single time. And then with those very same data sets, you could sit back and say, who would be a great partner for this, right? Is it, whatever, Bose microphones? Is it, Apple laptops? Is it the things that you're not even thinking about, like cables, right? I remember I did a deal. There's a company called S Tokyo, which is a Japanese-based company, but they produce primarily wires. And man, I did a deal with them years ago that most people were just like, yo, how did you think of that? Because I'm like, yo, the number one thing that you lose on tour, every DJ, is their wires. Like, they always lose them. From show to show to show, you're gonna lose them. So, and then once again, taking notes on who has done it, right? So for me, it was, it really wasn't a Steve Stout, as much as people catalyze him as like, oh, Steve is the guy. Steve was doing great things, but advertising, there were so many other amazing advertisers. They don't look like us, but they have the resumes. They've been doing great things. So you're going to look at, if Issa Rae is the person that's doing it, look at what she's doing, because you can learn from her wins and her losses.
Yeah.
But that's what I would suggest. Start with those 2 shows, collect the data, break them down, and move on them. Even if it just happens to be like a crazy idea, it could be like you talking to you, right? There's a group of kids in Africa right now. I want to say, I don't know if it's Senegal or the Congo, but they're doing these sci-fi movies off of iPhones. Insane shit. Like, it just looks like it's so dope. But remember, inventiveness comes from necessity. So whatever is necessary, what you see as a challenge is a necessity, and then invent and be, create ingenuity around it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely what I would say for that project.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I get extremely held back on like funding and things like that, and just like, ooh, and then like the perfectionist in me comes out, where it's just like, I want everything to be like perfect, and I know it can't be like that. Like, it has to be like, from the soul more than anything. But yeah. I
mean, I never really talk like things I post on Instagram, right? Because it's very clubhouse-ish. But I'm just gonna say this. Number one, if you guys want to connect with me on Instagram, it's private. It's private for a reason, because I'm really about connecting with people, and really having real conversations. So don't just add me, and let's chop it up. But something I posted the other day is, all you need is less. All you need is less. You really don't need as much as you think you need. And I think for me, over the past 10 years, I've learned that more than anything in all of the pillars that I talked about, the question about being nervous, becoming a teacher. When you walk in the door and you're starting to get like kind of all this education, like academia stuff, all I realized is that it just needed to be me versus the school. Because a master's in kinesiology, and I ain't never go to biology in high school. A day in my life. Like I ain't never been to that class. You know what I'm saying? So I had to learn everything at the master's level even harder. Mm-hmm. I think there's another question down there.
Oh yeah. I get married in August, and I'm still in that space of breaking into the career field I'm most passionate about. Everything I create and work on helps me towards that. As someone who has had such a busy life and such unique experiences, did you ever feel like you had to prove or really show your now wife that what you were doing would pay off, if that makes sense? And that was from Devin.
Man, perfect sense. Now listen, we can really talk about this. All right, Devin, and I'm gonna give you the real, and I'm gonna give you some real tangible advice. So take out a pen and a paper and write this down. This might sound like a crazy one-liner. Protect your house, right? Mm-hmm. So understand that your house in entirety, as your family, your wife, your future children, whoever else is a part of that extension of everything, you want them to be with you on the journey, but you don't want them to suffer the consequences of that journey, right? Because that is what causes discord. So let me give that to you more tangibly. When I met my son's mother, right? Because I have two children from different women, right? My son's mother, we were together for, I want to say like 10, 12, 15 years, right? She was able to kind of like really see this progression of like nothing to something. There was never a day from the day that she met me that she ever, she knew it was going to go. She didn't have a doubt. But let me tell you, it was some ebbs and flows. It was some highs and it was some really low lows. And what I recognized in that relationship was that I had a partner who was like down, but who also suffered when I suffered, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the thing that kept that from being a true dissipator in that space was that there was never a doubt that I was going to work my fingers to the blood to get to where I wanted to go, right? And in there, you can find solace and protection as a partner, right? As your partner. Now, moving further along, when I met my wife, which we've been together for almost like a decade plus now, that grind never changed, regardless of the achievements that I had when we met. And so in your situation, understand that your work ethic is going to be the protection that your partner needs. That means that the days where you feel like you're tired, you didn't even start yet, right? That means that the times where you feel like, man, I'm hitting a wall, you didn't even start yet. That's what's going to help your spouse really understand and see. And then it is your job to then explain and have them invested in a way where they're still protected, right? Rent is paid. There's some type of food in the refrigerator. There's, right? All of these things. But remember, your dream is your dream. If you're not whole, you can't help anyone else be whole. You can't show anyone else how to be whole. So it's really important that, I talked a little bit about the pillars, and there's a exercise that I do that I actually did this, in lectures, that lecture at universities. And so these pillars, I created those in order to make sure my foundation was strong, right? And so these pillars are the things that are non-negotiable, right? And so understand that when you join families, because that's really what you're doing. So my wife right now, she's amazing. she's like royalty in Africa, right? For real, like no questions. So, you know, you don't really think, depending on where you're from, you're not really recognizing like you're joining two families, like for real. And everything that comes with you then moves on to that extended family and that family. And so you got to protect your house, right? You got to make sure that in your grind, you're showing that there's no way that you're going to lose. At the same time, you have to supplement your income. You have to put away your pride. You have to tuck your ego. You have to build your education. You have to build your skills. You got to be everything to your dream that's necessary for you truly to achieve that dream. It's an extremely important thing, you know, and everything that you create, it does help you towards that, but is it productive? Right? Are you being productive? Is it a productive move towards that goal? You know, there's many things that I do. Like, I love music. Listen, I made music, I've rapped, I've sang, I've released records with major labels. I've done all that. But was it productive? Right? It was a part of my dream, but I can tell you, my son's mother was like, that shit ain't fucking productive. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not productive. You got a store to run. You got to take, you know, your son to school. Like, you got things you can't be, you know, so it's those things that come up in that way. Do you have a mentor group or support group where men can talk about? Listen, this is a great question. First and foremost, Devin, did I answer your question? And did you need me to be any more specific? Oh, cool. Appreciate you. You can hit me up anytime, Devin, on Insta. We could talk about this because I'll be on it a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is real stuff. And congratulations, first and foremost, too, man. It's a beautiful thing. So yeah, mentors. I met my first mentor when I was 23 years old. And I realized that is the key. His name is Ephraim Jenkins. Ephraim is the production manager to the stars. Like, he's that dude. But Ephraim was married. Ephraim had a family. He would hop off the plane from Tokyo and go pick his kid up from school. He taught me everything I knew about not living that music industry life. And from there, I realized that I needed mentors that speak to me in a way that I could understand them and that they could guide me. And he also helped me realize that I had mentors prior to. Easy AD from the Cold Curse Brothers. I never liked him when I met him. He was extremely hard on me. He was extremely tough on me. But at some point, he softened up once he saw me doing the right thing, right? Grandmaster Caz, like, you know, people in the streets, you know what I'm saying? My barber was in the streets, you know, and we knew him in the streets. These are all men that I talk to on a consistent, regular, all the time basis, besides peers who are actually at my level and above my level, right? And that doesn't mean that they're the same age. They could be younger than me. They just have a better understanding of the universe within a specific topic or thing. Everyone can't be everything to you. So you're gonna have to build a mentorship group that fits specifically those pillars in your life. So I have mentors for community. I have mentors for wealth before riches and riches. I have mentors for creativity. I have mentors for family. These are all things that are important. One of the guys who I met back in 2011, who you guys might have heard of, his name is Eric Thomas. Eric helped me understand, right? And me and Eric did some dope work together. And what really helped me is he helped me understand like what it means to be a man in a relationship with a woman and still be a man that's a father, a man that's a businessman, a man that's right? Like, he helped me understand that. He also helped me understand that, you could really do well doing good. because I think by the time I had kind of met him, I was on the fence. I was like, I don't know, I might just start managing all of the gangster rappers in the South. Like, we gonna do it all. Lil, whatever, we could talk about it. Molly, whatever you want to talk about. Perk, whatever. And he helped me understand, like, yo, you don't got to be surrounded around that because it's not conducive to the progression of what you're fighting against, right? And so E was a big one. Of course, his partner like CJ, me and CJ used to kick it all the time, you know. Yeah, but I put together a pretty dope group, and I'm building more. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm here in Berlin, so I live between New York and Berlin, and I'm meeting people here that over the past 5-6 years that have really expanded further. You know, my wife is a mentor to me in many, many ways because she's absolutely brilliant in everything that she does. And she's, you know, probably one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. And she's on her own journey and her own progression. And so she fits a certain pillar and we have those conversations. So yeah, I mean, E is that guy. There wouldn't be a lot of people if there wasn't for E. You know, the thing about me is that I never needed a motivator, right? But I needed a mentor. And I think in me, you know, being around E and CJ and just having those conversations very early on in his career, as what you saw, because, you know, I think a lot of people forget, like, they don't really know his story, but E was already E at 18, 19 years old. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was already who he was. And meeting him 20 years later, what you're doing is you're just seeing the progression of, like, how he's been able to catalyze his gift, his understanding of self, his willingness to put in the work, the willingness to grind from all aspects and understandings of his life and what he wanted for himself. I never really, for me, like, money wasn't a thing. I could wake up and go make 30 G's in a day. Like, it was never something that was hard for me. And that's just also to speak to you, Devin, about that too. Like, that's what I'm talking about when I say that grind. I don't mean, like, when I say productive, I mean, really, there's certain checks on your checklist that you should have that's going to keep, you know, protect your house. And, you know, for me, finances was always easy, you know, and taking care of my woman was always easy. And, like, all these things were just always easy to me because they were a part of the very fabric of who I am. And when you meet a person like Eric Thomas, you know, it's very rare that you meet someone who has it knows the fabric of who they are through trial and error and challenge, and willing to face it and then willing to share it with the world selflessly, because he had no plans of, like, ever really making super buku dollars on it. He was going to talk to you. If he would have met you in the street and you were trying, he would talk to you on the street and save your life. And those people like that are not a dime a dozen. They're very rare, which I'm extremely happy to have met him and been in his presence and had real conversations. And, you know, these are things that are important. So yeah, keep listening, like, keep tuning into him. Because if the thing I'm going to say about the mentors is that the digital world, right, social media now allows you to have mentors without needing the physical connection to them, even though they're an email or, you know, DM away. But the beginning, you could actually kind of shop around. You could be like, you know what, that person's message is good for me. That person's message, I don't really like that. You know, it's what works. And don't forget to keep the women in there too. Like, you know, they're inspiring, you know, like they're a part, they are you and you are them, you know? So, you know, I know sometimes it's hard for men to really feel like they can have mentorship relationships or relationships with women that are beyond, you know, romantic. But, you know, my best friend growing up in high school was a girl. She was much older than me, you know, and it's always been that way for me, where I've been able to seek mentorship from extremely powerful women who have helped me as well. So, you know, diversify. So if there's anything else, feel free. Like I'm here. I know we have, you know, a time frame, but it's 1 o'clock in the morning here. So I'm up. We here.
Anybody else? I'm still kind of stuck on you bringing up ET. Like, I like stumbled across him one day and like just on YouTube, fucking around and like hearing his stuff. Like I was listening to his Thank God It's Monday series, and
Which is that's how I found him too. Season 1.
Yeah. And where was he doing it? I think he was like on the train tracks at one point. Like he was like, and he just kept on like explaining his story. And I was like, that's wild. And all I can remember was like listening to him. Like I felt like I could wrestle a bear after like I finished listening to him. Like it's wild.
Yeah, the thing is also too, what people now pay for is because he will also hold you accountable to the things that you say you're going to do and who you're going to be. And how you're going to show up in this world. And, you know, many times we don't meet people who talk about it and are about it. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm just telling you for real, that is who he is. Like he talks about it, but he really is about it. Like he really irons his wife's clothes. Like he really takes care of his kid. Like he's really about that life. And for me, meeting him as a younger man, my son was younger. I was just really kind of figuring out what I'm gonna do with myself as far as like, you know, because when you guys have kids, or if you have kids, you probably understand that there's like stages when you have children, right? They're young and they're babies and you're like, oh yeah, okay, and as soon as you think you got it, something else come up, they get older, you know, and you're like, oh man, now I got to figure out how to do that. And we don't have a lot of like crazy dedicated fathers that are willing to share in our communities, right? Like dads who are dads, they kind of walk around silent and humble, and which I think totally needs to change. But then where does a young man go? You know, even your own father, he don't know what to tell you. My father told me, he said, you got to don't fuck it up. It's simple. Don't fucking take care of that boy. That's it, you know? And then get mad at you when you do something wrong. You're like, you ain't teaching me how to do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I ain't know. So it's those types of things, you know, and finding these individuals who are now these, you know, quote unquote influencers, right? But there are people who have real influence, and ET is he's a real person. Not like my man who was cheating on his wife. Talk about he giving relationship advice. Like
I still have not listened to any of it because I'm just like, oh my God, that's such a mind fuck.
yeah, you just stay away from him.
He's a terrible person for that.
Oh, listen, but he's not unique. There are many people who exist in that space in that way.
Yeah.
Who are really building platforms and leading people astray.
Yeah.
Real. So.
Yeah. Totally agree.
Yeah. But I do want to share one thing. And we got my man AB3 here, my man Abe on here. And I just wanted to share this project with you guys because I'm pretty excited about it. I think it's very cool. And it's something that, you know, Abe is a part of. It's like 5 of us. We used to meet on Sundays at Starbucks, and it's really kind of like overflowed over these past couple of years. It's called Kick of Knowledge. We do this academy called Kicks Academy, where we teach science and technology through sneaker design. And, you know, we're kind of seeing it come, you know, a quarter circle, right? Because full circle is something different, but a quarter of the circle is kind of like these wins that we're getting and that we're seeing. And remember, I started, you know, with who I was as a kid, what was important to me, why I decided to do all the things that I did. And I just wanted to share that that legacy is being continued, you know, through, you know, what we're doing as a squad. And Air Max Day is coming up. I want you guys to register for Air Max Day because I want you to experience the youth that we've been rocking with and banging with over the past couple of years. And now they're in full-blown Nike ads. They're doing amazing things. And this is what we're here for. Also, too, just real quick, like Abe is a rapper, graphic designer, illustrator, like we all come with, you know, we're all kind of like the James Bond when we do our thing. And so when we come together, like we really create some dope stuff. So I just want y'all to check this out real quick. This is the ad. I'm gonna probably post it on my Insta, but you'll probably see it on the Nike Insta, Snapchat, TikTok, and all the other things that they're gonna put it on. But these are our kids.
True first time for Nike. True first time for Nike. True first time for Nike. Come on, let me sing you a song.
How did they get air in a shoe? It's hollow. Whoa.
You know, it's not a bad idea to let people actually see what an airbag looks like.
How dope is that?
True first, I'll celebrate. True first time, I'll celebrate.
You guys are the future. You are the legacy of what Air Max will become. So think outside the box when you're designing your sneaker.
True first time for Nike.
So music by my man, Aaron, who is a 10-year-old from Jamaica, our Jamaica cohort. Kicks Academy is in New York. It's in London. It's in Berlin. We open up India next week. And it's a program that really tries to take industrial design, collaborate it with just your general illustrative creativity, and then also move it into kind of the esteemed, we call it esteemed. So that's sports, science, tech, engineering, arts, math, media, entrepreneurship, and design thinking. And this really comes from like being who we are naturally. So like all the stories I shared and a whole bunch of stories I didn't share, that comes into the space, right? And Abe is seeing, you know, what happened at my school. He was doing it in Brownsville in the hood, you know what I'm saying? Thumping through. So it's these are the things, you know, and this is the stuff that I believe that changes the game. I think there was another question. Was there? No, that was it. Yeah, so that was it. So I just want to end on that note because you are, what you are is enough. Who you are is enough. Change the game, right? And that doesn't mean like bravado shit. That means really look at yourself inside, look at the environment you're creating around yourself, look at the ethos and the pillars you're building, build something great and change the game. That's it. It's Coach Mike.
Thank you, Coach.
Appreciate you, Abe. I'm gonna give myself a round of applause for that one. But yeah, reach out to me, you know, on my Insta. Hit me up anytime. I'm really about this life. I live it all the time, as Shanice and Sam know. And I look forward to connecting with y'all. Thanks, Keaton and Devin, for being here. For the whole thing too, like y'all ain't even dip out. So something must have been interesting. And big ups to Shanice and Sam. You guys are so dope, you know? So I appreciate you. And thanks, Abe, for, you know, locking in and connecting.
We just wanted to say that we appreciate you so much. Like, this has been a wealth of knowledge tonight, and we just appreciate you being open enough to share your energy and to share your story and to just share your wisdom, because it's a big deal. And as you said before, like, it is rare when like good Black men and Black fathers, like they do keep a lot of things to themselves. Like when they're doing their jobs, they're just like stay humble, keep their head down, and then keep it moving. And it's just nice to see that you're like open to like helping other people grow in their journeys and things like that. And we appreciate you. We're honored to have you.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, we could do this on a regular basis. Actually, I really like this, man. So, you know, if y'all want to do this all the time, let's do it all the time. You know what I'm saying? Let me know. I'm down. But it is 1:13 a.m. and I'm tired. I've been up since 6 a.m. And I love y'all, but I am so tired.
You guys have a good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank y'all.
Appreciate y'all.
Yeah.
Appreciate y'all.